Hello and welcome, guys, to my first English episode with AJ from the UK. He's a great online prep coach and also a great natural junior bodybuilder who won the WNBF Junior Worlds last year. For the people who don't know who you are, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So thank you very much for having me on, by the way, and hopefully this reaches some people with the English version. But regardless, I'm, like you said, sort of a junior bodybuilder. I coach through a company called Made by Morris, or Team MBM, and I've been involved in the sport since about 2014 was my first competitive season. And funnily enough, before that, I wasn't really that serious about bodybuilding. I was very into my motorsport, so I have a background in racing karts. That's initially what built my competitive drive, and then moving forwards from there, didn't have the money for motorsport, went into sort of wanting to build some muscle, realised that you could compete, and luckily I found natural bodybuilding fairly soon, which I think is a good thing. And then it sort of escalated from there. From my first show, I just developed a pretty serious passion for doing this. And I like to think that I'm a bodybuilder that, partly why I'm 1,000 miles away from home just for a gym. I love this. I love bodybuilding, and I'm sort of the type that wants to sort of maximize every variable you can sort of tick off, kind of thing. And yeah, that's a brief roundup of sort of who I am and what I do.
Yeah, it's if you don't follow AJ, you really have to follow him, because he's, like he just told us, he's really passionate about everything, and also puts out great content and great informations. So just asking, because last year you had a pretty good competitive season.
Sure. With
lots of wins, also on bigger events like the WNBF Worlds.
Of course.
I just want to touch the time after your competitions. How did you feel? How was the time after them?
Yeah, I mean, for anyone in any sort of competitive route, it's going to be a hard process. Like, however many times you compete, it's always the same. You have that post-competition blues kind of thing. And mine was a whirlwind, right? Because it was my first time in the States, first time in America, qualifying for Worlds, having done shows. I started prep in March. Early March, I finished prep late November. It was pretty much the whole year spent dieting, right? Yeah. So I had a bunch of things going on, had even more things going on at that period of time in my life that were even bigger than bodybuilding. So I think that when you come out of a show and you're dealing with the things like sort of, the food focus, the immense fatigue and things like that, you have got to put that in, like at every moment in the prep, when it gets hard, you have got to put it in perspective. At the end of the day, you've got yourself in that position, so it's your choice to get yourself out sensibly. So that's what I told myself. So in reality, the transition in itself was something that I'm pretty proud of. I think I did a good job. Looking back, I wouldn't change anything that I did, which I think is something that I'm really proud to say. Would I have changed all of my others in 2014 and 2015? Absolutely. Like, those were awful. I ate way too much and I gained way too much weight. And, that set me up for essentially a poorer off-season. So, from a mindset point of view, I knew that I was going to deal with it okay, even with sort of the American culture and the food out there. Like, everyone was messaging me on Instagram saying, AJ, you've got to go try this, you've got to go try that. And I was like, go away, like, please go away. I'm just so I stuck to my normal foods. I just did plenty of steps, explored, the cities, and I think, I spent 2 weeks out there in the States after the shows, and I came back about 3 pounds, 4 pounds heavier.
It's great, man.
Whereas could have come back quite easily 15 or 20 heavier.
Yeah, for sure.
And that would have been a really bad position to be in. So yeah, I think I handled it pretty well. But for the newer competitors out there, don't be hard on yourself if the first time you fuck it up.
Yeah.
Because I did that. I'm pretty sure everyone does.
Yeah, and if not in the short term, shortly after the contest prep, maybe it will be 1, 2 or 3 months post the show where you will be not that strict anymore and just go crazy then. It doesn't really matter if it's 1 week or 3 months after the competition. you still go crazy if you don't go into this whole thing planned, and also think it's a lot to get the experience. So you have to you know that that you have no benefit of eating more junk food just to get your short-term pleasures.
That's it. And I think on that point, you know, it's very important as a transition process to set off-season goals immediately upon exiting your show, because the goal of the show is now gone. So if you come out and you don't have any distinguished goals, you're going to be in a bad place mentally. So like set some lifting goals in the gym, like you want to do this, you want to do that. You know that you've got to eat up to be able to do that, and you've got to eat up sensibly, and then go from there. So I immediately set the goal of competing in the future, so I knew that I had to handle this phase well to set me up for that. Yeah, so that's important.
So what are your plans? When will be your next show?
Yeah, good question. So I think I'm in two minds at the moment. With how well and successful this year has been, I have been contemplating next year. Whether or not that will pan out or not, I'm not too sure. Because the main goal of my next competitive season will be to earn my pro card in the lightweight division. And I was on stage as a junior at like 148 pounds. The cutoff for most lightweight categories is 154. So if I was to give it 2 years, I think I'd definitely be on the cusp. I'd be very close. I think with the amount of tissue, I think I definitely would have gained by then. I don't like to set stupid limitations on a pound a year or some shit like that. So I think I can, if I took 2 really successful years off, at my age, I definitely think I could get 6 pounds of stage weight. I definitely think I could retain more as well on the way down. So I'm contemplating next year, but I will see where I'm at the end of this year to confirm that. But it will most likely be 2020, and you know that'll be good because I'll be prepping around people like Valentin again, because that's his goal, to compete in that year, and to do that would be immense, because I do like the creating that environment where you're prepping around friends. Like, it's a good thing to have for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you just get motivated by each other, and the most important thing is you push each other to the limits, have somebody to talk about the harder parts, and also you have a lot of people that understand your situation.
Yes,
That's pretty important, especially for during the competitive season, because if you're feeling a little bit left alone, it can be pretty dark to do a prep all alone.
Yeah.
Now that you said that you're going to do an extended off season, what are your plans to stay motivated and keep, like you said at the beginning, to optimize every variable, and also don't lose the goal out of sight?
Sure. So it's honestly, it's like doing things like this, like being in this gym, in this environment, surrounding myself with, you know, people like yourself, Valentin, Kevin, and all the, to be honest, like most of the people here are fucking motivating. And you know, unfortunately, and I don't have any problem saying this, I really don't have that back at home. In my current environment, it's very limiting. So I'm like one of the strongest in my gym, and I hate that. I hate being the strongest, because I want to come in and see people pick up shit from the floor that I can't, you know, and I want to see that that's possible. You know, like Kevin doing, I think I got like 11 or 12 reps, and he got 20 plus reps with that weight on the hack. You know, I want to see people doing that. I want to see the possibilities. So it's doing things like that, and it's surrounding myself with people that have got a similar long-term vision. So, you know, like, you know, Valentin will kick me up the arse if I do something like I even pulled the plug on like a minicut like 1 month ago, and I talked to him about it, and he was like, yeah, what the fuck are you doing? And sometimes I need people like that in my corner just to basically back me up, and keep me to push in the right direction. And I've never been one to like surrounding myself with people that just sort of quite an English phrase, but bum lick. It's like they kiss your ass, basically. I don't like that at all. And I have plenty of people like that, you know, that will tell me I look good all the time. They'll comment on my face saying, wow, like so much tissue. I hate that. I want someone to say, like, we were doing curls and Valentin was saying your arms are shit. You know, like, I want people like that in my corner, kind of thing. that when, you know, if someone like that actually gives me a compliment, I'll be like, okay, cool, that actually means something. It's a very serious thing. So yeah, from that perspective, it's just sort of surrounding myself with similar people, doing things like this, going to different gyms. And the future goal for mine, in terms of, I want to be in a position also like coaching wise, where I'm really pouring everything into the athletes that I have and giving them the environment on like show day where I'm literally doing everything for them, because unfortunately prep itself is quite a selfish thing. The investment process of it is long, and at some point, whether you like it or not, it's gonna take away from your job and from what you do elsewhere. So, you know, if you have a relationship, a girlfriend, even just things like hanging around with your parents and, you know, things like that, it's just, it starts to suck a little bit. So I owe it to the people around me just to be a little bit more attentive to them. And yeah, I mean, I miss prep a lot. So it's sometimes hard to sort of set goals within an off season. But I also, when I'm prepping, I miss being strong as hell, and being able to travel and do trips like this and not really worry about, you know, okay, I might have not hit my macros like yesterday. I might have not, you know, I might have eaten a little bit more today. Like, it's not the end of the world kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, that's sort of where I'm at.
Yeah, it's especially if you're doing a lot of competitions and you're really eager to present you again on stage.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty good to really enjoy your off seasons. Like I said, do the things that you can't do during prep, especially in the natural scene where you're prepping like a half a year at least.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just takes away some value of the life. I mean, it's hard to tell for an outsider, because for us it's not really that you say, I would more likely to do that. It's not really that, because at this moment I want to get everything done, so I look great at competition day. And yeah, why did you change your mind with the minicut? Why do you try to push the bodyweight now even harder?
Sure, I mean, it's not in the sense that I'm trying to necessarily push too much from here, because I am close to, at this present moment, close to a peak level of sort of where I want to sort of push body fat levels. So I'm sort of gaining at a slower rate, and then once I harden this body weight a little bit more, then I'll go for another sort of push to see what the next phase of body weight looks like. But the reason why I sort of pulled the plug on the minicut is because I think spending as much, you know, and balancing back this up, you know, I think spending as much time out of that environment when you're in a deficit as possible, especially when you've had a long prep, is key. And, you know, not only from like a, you know, a psychological perspective, but from like a physical perspective, performance in the gym, all these variables that you want to maximize when you're in an off season, you're not going to maximize in a harsh deficit. You know, it's just not going to happen. You're going to be able to recover from less. You're going to, you know, sleep quality is going to diminish. You know, you might even bring back things like food focus if you do a mini cut too soon after a long prep. And those are things you just don't want. You're going to run into a lot of problems if you bring them back, you know. So, and also I think what I realized is a big thing is I, in my off seasons, consume like quite a high carbohydrate diet and not too much fat. So I, you know, it's not like crazy low, but it's not crazy high. And I like that approach, but what you do get with that is incredible amounts of water retention. Like incredible. So you're always very spooled over. So to term it as that. So when I did like a week of reduced carbohydrates, I was like, holy shit, I'm way leaner than I thought. You know, like all the blurriness that I was carrying was just glycogen, water weight, and all of that jazz. And I use a lot of sodium as well. So as soon as I dropped some of that off, it was just like, okay, I'm actually leaner than I thought. So I'll just continue.
Can totally relate to that. When I had made some weight for my powerlifting prep 2 weeks ago, I also just cut out the carbs basically and kept everything the same, and I think I dropped like 2 kg
Yes.
in 3 days.
Yeah.
It's just crazy to going from 92 kg to under 90 just by eating the same calories and just, like I said, reducing the carbohydrates to a normal level.
Yeah.
Because I've really also fell in love with the approach of pushing the carbs pretty high and keeping the fat pretty moderate. Yeah. So nothing crazy low, because I'm feeling pretty bad when I get like under 0.7 grams of fat per kg. So and all above, just slight, it can be 5 grams is enough to keep me off of any weird cravings of getting me that I feel good, great regeneration, great performance in the gym, and everything's great. Would you say that you're on your body weight now on your sweet spot, or are you already a little bit above or still under?
Good question. I think some things, like I think my pressing can improve. I think if I gain more body weight, because I'm like in the high 170s at the moment, so that puts me about 30 pounds above my previous stage weight.
Yeah.
I think if I was 40 above, my pressing would be tremendous. But I think actually my free weight squat and my deadlift might actually not benefit from that weight, because I find that my deadlift stays the strongest until the very end, but it actually improves as I get a little bit leaner. My high bar back squat as well slightly improves as I get a bit leaner. But things like the hack where you're supported and things like that, you know, you can be pretty good at that for sort of whatever body weight you're at. But a little bit around the hips, a little bit on the sort of the lower back, those sort of areas accumulating with body fat help a lot. But the biggest thing that I found is, you know, once I get into the 170s, my pressing just changes dramatically, because anything below 160, anything below 170, and my upper body is fairly lean. My upper body gets lean pretty fast. So my upper back and traps just lose a lot of body fat, and my pressing just goes to shit, and I hate it. But that's the reality of body composition. So yeah, I'd say I'm pretty close to sort of a sweet spot for most things, but I'm definitely intrigued as to, you know, what I can get out of pushing a little bit more. Hence why I'm doing it. You know.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's funny, like, because the most people think they're actually, if when they are getting leaner or lose some body weight and stuff like that, that's, like you said, the performance will decrease on the squat or the deadlift. But it's especially it's, like I said, the first thing that goes to really bad will be the bench press, because every inch that you maybe have to move a little bit more, or don't have that don't have the better angles and stuff like that, you will feel it immediately, because it's also a higher percentage stage of the full weight that you use.
Yep.
So what's your body weight compared to previous off seasons and maybe starts of the cutting phases?
Sure. So I think I started my 2017 prep at like 185. So I'm about 5 pounds off that, and that looked awful. Like, it looked so bad. But I kind of had to do that because I just wanted to experiment as to how top end I could go. That was like my top end. So there's no more left. And by that point, my appetite was like through the floor, which is something that I've really worked on this off season. So you're limited pretty much as a natural by how much food you can consume without having appetite issues. Food is your main tool. You know, we're not going to use anabolics, and for most people, like around our body weight, you're a bit heavier than me though. But most people around my body weight, appetite doesn't tend to be too much of an issue because you don't have to eat too much to grow. But I did something that absolutely ruined my appetite last time, because I was having like granola for most of my meals. Seriously, like I couldn't stomach anything at all. It was awful, and my veggie intake just went completely down, and I was basically just getting lazy by that point. So something that I've definitely, and you know, you talked about optimizing things like that earlier. something I've done this off season is kept my nutrition approach very regimented, like very, very regimented. I won't eat out much at all. If I go on trips, of course, I'm surrounded by other people, of course I'll eat out. But when I'm at home, it's like I have a regimented, pretty much set meal plan. I just eat those foods.
Yeah.
Whereas, in previous off seasons when I've lost appetite and when I've seen my caloric intake not be where it needs to be, my nutrient timing's completely whack. My ability to eat just completely diminishes. And that shows in body composition, it shows in training performance, shows in recovery capacity. It really does. So when you get lazy with your food, like, this huge thing. So that's where I'm at, sort of, and from a body weight perspective, I think I'll be clean into the 180s without having any appetite issues, hopefully, because I'm still able to eat pretty well at the moment without too much problems.
Yeah, sounds great. Because you mentioned the meal plan, I think a meal plan is actually often a great tool to use, especially at the end of the prep or even at the last maybe 1 or 2 months, because you just reduce the stress so much.
Removes the thinking process.
Yeah. Some of my clients who are studying have now had the big test season now at university, and we made more or less by trial and error just thought how can we optimize the things, and meal plan was the way to go. Stop thinking, just doing for the 4 maybe 6 weeks, and then you can go to your flexible approach or whatever you want to do. And also now at the off season, like I said, you're getting so satiated by everything that you don't want to eat so much junk food, and you just don't want to think about food. You just want to get it down, and don't waste any energy on it. Get your focus and your energy into the performance in the gym, and try to be as good as possible there.
Absolutely, agreed.
What would you say about your training? How did it change the last 5 years, or 3 to 5 years?
Sure. So I've essentially come round in a big circle. So initially when I started training, I was surrounded by people that were doing the basics, and the gym didn't have much equipment. It was very basic. I was just ending up squatting, deadlifting, benching, things like that. And I always loved training, like, to failure, or close to, within those moves. You're not going to take a squat to full muscular failure, because you'll be pinning it and popping out a hip. I loved that style of really, really hard training, and I was very lucky, like I said, to surround myself with people that liked that too, and introduced me to that at a very young age. So coming out of that, I then discovered sort of, I guess, more people within the natural realm that were displaying an approach that maybe seemed more sensible on paper, but was totally unenjoyable for me. Like, I do not like training on a template that tells you how many you're meant to leave in the tank, or a template that is, I guess, purely auto-regulated, so you pick movements on the day and you go by how you feel, kind of thing. I want to, I like setting up my training to something that I enjoy, which is, I say it's not low volume, I'd say it's moderate volume, higher intensities, because I tend to set up my training in the sense that I place all the sort of mechanical tension stuff at the front, and then, so that's, your big moves. Those will be low volume. Those will be like 2 or 3 sets max, 3 maximum. And those will be like plenty of warm-ups and really making them count. Like, those sets make my day. If I fuck up those sets, I'm really upset, kind of thing. So those are my go-tos, and then the rest of the session will comprise of some stuff that with a slightly greater range of motion for more muscle damage, and then finishing off the session with more pumpy, squeezy stuff for metabolic stress. And essentially, as long as you tick those 3 boxes, you're covering hypertrophy as a whole. And I think what people maybe overlook, and what I overlooked when I initially started following some other people, was the fact that we don't essentially want to make this easy for ourselves. The people that are making really great progress and changing their physiques, they're doing stuff that's challenging on a daily basis. And whether that's, progressing in the logbook, or or you know, doing sets where you have to go absolutely crazy to get another rep, kind of thing. I think that's really what changes physiques and what puts crazy physiques on stage. And you know, like, not all things are causation correlation. So what someone's doing equals physique, because genetics play a huge role,
for sure,
and everything like that. But across the board, you do see a lot of correlations with the way that people train. So yeah, now I'm backing my sort of old camp, set with a little bit more knowledge, I'd like to think, and my execution is fairly good, and you know, I won't allow things to get sloppy when it comes to execution, but I will be working hard in the gym with the basic stuff, pretty much. That's how I'm a big fan of like I said, logbooking. Like, I have a pen and paper and I just logbook everything that I do. I'm really a huge fan of that, and I'll always do that, I think.
Yeah, you will be a great member of the gym here, because the owner, Andreas,
yes,
he more or less just says pretty much the same. Says the most theoretical, optimal approach will not outlast or won't be better for the guy who can't stick to it and doesn't enjoy it.
Yep.
Because if you stick to a training plan that you're really enjoying and really just putting in the work, and like I said, just progressing on a weekly, monthly basis, then you will get much better results with the not optimal approach than if you try to force yourself to go with the most theoretical part.
of course, yeah.
So what would be your advice for people, or especially younger people, who thinks about competing, for guys who are in their first prep?
Yeah, great question. So I think that the most important thing is get to a show. You have to see a show before you decide to compete in one. You want to understand as to whether, you know, the things that people are doing on stage that you want to do. You know, you don't want to essentially realise on the day of your first competition, like, I don't really want to step on stage in front of all these people, like on that stage with that lighting and those trunks. And it's a kind of an odd sport, you know. So you want to get an awareness of what you're getting yourself into before you do it, and you want to see the caliber as well. So I think a lot of people have a big misunderstanding as to what the caliber is. In British natural bodybuilding is very, very high caliber.
Yeah,
like no one in Britain or UK will win an overall if they're not very good. You have to be very outstanding to be winning overalls, or your class, unless it's once in a blue moon week class, you know, which rarely happens.
Yeah.
So get yourself along to a show, and then I think most competitors would definitely benefit from a coach for their initial prep. I had one, and I think that coach should be a competitor themselves. As much as there's some coaches that are wonderful coaches at coaching natural bodybuilding and getting people lean, I think if they haven't competed and they haven't taken themselves there mentally to the low body fat levels that the competition day requires, they can't coach the most important aspect of bodybuilding, which is mindset. Beyond everything, beyond nutrition, macros, you know, what split you're on, how you're doing your training, mindset rules over everything. If you haven't got the mindset for this game, you will be weak as fuck and you won't win. Like, you just won't win. Someone will beat you that out-mindseted you. You know, they had the ability to adhere to the diet, they had the ability to push themselves harder in the gym, and they just generally pushed on when the going got tough, because it will get really hard whatever way you look at it. You can either, I say to my clients, you can view the sort of the end of a prep as like a wave coming into the beach. You can either fucking ride it, or you can get swallowed up and get buried underneath, and you'll be one of the people that places second and below.
Yeah,
you know. So I think that get yourself along to a show initially, potentially get a coach, get someone that's competed, and understands, or get someone that not just competed but got very lean, got contest lean. And then you'll be in a pretty good place from there. I think.
For sure.
Set up.
Especially, like I said, the mindset thing. It's pretty important.
Yeah.
Because even if you're maybe not that lean or not that big like the guy next to you, because you just see on their presentation and stuff like that, they wanted to win. They're just taking up the room, and it's also one of the things why my last competition season went so well, because I just wanted it more, probably, the guys next to me, and it's I mean, it's like if they're getting in your way, you probably could push them away, or you
throw them off the stage.
If you would have to, because it's you're spending so much time, putting so much work in. You want to fulfill your potential, and especially with the presentation and posing part, many people are taking so much away from themselves.
Yeah, massively, and I think what you said there about being the one that wants it on stage is huge. It's like huge, but I actually, because I've got quite a few junior bodybuilding clients, and they're all going to be competing against each other, and I told them all at the start of the prep, and if any of them watch this, I told them all, it's a question of who wants it the most. I don't care what genetics you've got. If someone wants it more than the other, they'll probably end up having it.
Yeah.
Simple. And I'm not going to coach them on wanting it, because it's up to them. If you want it, you can have it. You know, if you want to hit your macros to the T every single day, if you want to work hard in the gym, if you want to do your steps when you've got 1,500 steps to do and it's 12 p.m. at night, go and do them, because someone else might be doing them. And the final thing, wanting it on stage, man, I think at both of even my qualifier level shows, where I almost knew that I had a great degree of chance of doing well because I'd already got momentum, I was almost crying backstage, pumping up, because I was so emotionally attached to winning that show. People actually, I had a couple of people come up to me and ask if I was okay, because I was just so zoned in on getting on stage and hitting every shot perfectly, and giving it my all. When I got announced as UK champion, there's a few people that filmed it, and you could literally, if someone had a shotgun in the audience, I as soon as they announced second, I just dropped to the floor, my limbs just completely gave up, because I'd wasted so much energy and so much thought, and my mind was completely fucked that I had nothing left. I just dropped, and then I cried for a long period after picking up that trophy, because I thought the Kai Green mindset, you think about doing these things, when I knew that we were reverse band hacking yesterday, I thought about those hacks for a good few days before I did them. That's what you're like though, when you're so about bodybuilding. You think about it on a frequent basis, and I'm sure that now with your powerlifting focus, you probably think about your deads 3 days before doing them, at least, because they mean a lot to you, and if they don't move, you're going to be upset. And I think that's the best part about bodybuilding. People can look at that and sort of say, maybe you're a bit too obsessed, or it's not doing you any favours, and at the end of the day, I think you'd agree, there's a lot worse things we could be doing than being obsessed with something that brings you great happiness, brings you health, as long as you don't fuck yourself up completely, and it brings you something that it gives you, I think, the number one thing in life, which is daily continual improvement. You're pursuing better. As long as you're doing that in one thing in life in general, I think you're doing pretty well. Whether that's work, your career with business, or with bodybuilding, with your sport. As long as you're doing that, you're waking up, you're getting out of bed, you have reasoning. It's awesome. And that's the best thing about it.
Yeah, for sure. Just enjoying life. So to sum it a little bit up, because you more or less took away a question from me. So that's the thing you love about bodybuilding, the possibility to make daily improvements on yourself, and at the end show them over a longer time period to present your improvements. Yeah,
I think I listened to a podcast, Joe Rogan podcast on the way here with Jordan Peterson, and he said, the best thing about life, or the most important thing about life is continual progression. It's constantly getting better. If
Yeah.
you've got that, you know, you've got you know, a big thing ticked off. I think also in periods of adversity, when you're going through times that are a bit tougher, and I've unfortunately had a few of them this year already. Bodybuilding was definitely the number one factor that kept me going and got me out of bed, got me doing stuff, got me happy. And someone commented on one of my YouTube videos, like, I talked about my off-season strategies and things like that, and someone commented saying, you know, because I said bodybuilding brought me happiness, like I said today, and they said something like that can't bring you happiness, like nothing brings you happiness. Like, who the fuck are you to say that?
Yeah.
Like, you know, if something makes you happy, something makes you happy. So yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing that I like about bodybuilding. Probably the second biggest thing, to answer your question in another format, is things like this. Like, I wouldn't be here, you know, in this gym sitting with you if it wasn't for bodybuilding. If it wasn't for reaching out to people like Valentin, you know, meeting him through the sport. You know, it's just crazy. It's awesome. And I really appreciate that. Because I've made a huge friendship network out of bodybuilding.
Yeah, for sure.
I would not have as many friends as I do if I was just, you know, in a 9-to-5 in an office job. I have, you know, international friends, which I can communicate with on a daily basis by, you know, Instagram, WhatsApp, whatever.
Yeah.
That's super cool. That's the best thing.
It's I never really thought about that, but it's just great how the passion connects to people.
Yeah.
And like I said, you got everywhere around the world some people that think like you do,
Yep.
that in the best case, like you do, travel around the world and spend some time with them.
Yes. Yeah, that's it.
What would you say? What would be the least thing you like about competitive bodybuilding?
That's a good question. I think, honestly, that's the first thing that came into my head, is the non-stop moaning about the process of bodybuilding. So it's like a plague. It's contagious when you diet. If you let it overwhelm you and you start complaining and you start telling everyone that you're tired and you're fatigued and everything sucks, guess what? You're going to drag yourself in the dirt. You're going to make yourself feel worse, and you're also going to drag about half of your following, especially newer competitors, into the dirt with you. One of my biggest things with my 2017 prep was I wanted to display through my socials, which were smaller at the time, so next time I prep, hopefully I'll be in an even bigger scale and I can do it even better. But I wanted to display the fact that you don't have to be a moany little bitch when you're prepping, and you can actually enjoy the process as much as you possibly can. Everyone knows that it's hard. You don't need to wake up and do an Instagram story telling everyone you feel rubbish and telling everyone it's hard. People know it's hard. If the people that are following you understand the process of bodybuilding, they know it's difficult. You don't need to tell them every damn morning, every damn evening. So yeah, and that's probably the thing that irritates me the most. It's more prominent in newer competitors.
Yeah.
But once they get an understanding of that's actually making things worse, you know, telling everyone that it sucks. How about tell everyone the good stuff? You know, how about wake up in the morning and tell everyone how awesome, you know, prep's going. How, you know, honesty is a great thing, but too much honesty when you're prepping will just basically make you feel depressed.
Yeah.
It'll make you feel horrible. So that's a big thing. And yeah, I think one of the things that a lot of people don't like, but I love, which is a good comment to I guess add, is I actually love the diversity in opinions. Some people hate it because they don't like. I don't see any of the things that go on within our community as arguing. It's just debating.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important thing. So, you know, it's why me and Valentin do the podcast. Like, there's some things that we really agree on most, but there's some things that we don't exactly agree on, like to the T. So we get to develop ourselves by doing that. And I like to actually speak and communicate with people that I know for a fact I don't agree with much of what they're doing, because then if one thing stands out to me and I sort of think, you know, actually that just makes some sense, I'll take that concept and move on with it. One of the things that I was initially very bad at, even quite recently, was I was pretty close-minded. So I would be quite sort of static in my statements. I'd be like, this works, this doesn't. Or you can't say that in bodybuilding.
Yeah.
You've got to have, and I've learnt this now, you've got to have the appreciation, the open-mindedness to say, okay, you've got this opinion, I might give it a shot, it might work. It might work better than what I'm currently doing. Someone tells me I need to stop training with high intensity and I need to do like a super high volume split for maximal hypertrophy. Damn, I'd try it, and if it worked, I'd stick with it, because essentially I like the training that gives me the maximal results. I do love training that way, you know, the other way. But if I'm getting maximal results, then I'll have to fall in love with it. It will have to be the approach that works. So yeah, I think that's something to sort of add to that scenario. But the main thing is the non-stop moaning. So yeah, if you do that, stop that.
Looking back now at your last few years as a competitive bodybuilder, what would you have wished to done more of? So it can maybe in the gym, in the training or nutrition side or regeneration side or lifestyle side, maybe follow some other people earlier. Could be anything.
That's a really good question, that. Jeez. I don't think there's much that I'd do differently if I look back at how I set up my phases. I think honestly, if I hadn't have won a UK title, if I hadn't have only lost as a junior, I only lost one show as a junior. I was unbeaten in every show that I did. Besides one, I lost to one guy. That was maybe a little bit debatable. So that sounds horribly cocky, so I do apologise.
Yeah.
But it was close. But I think honestly, I'd have maybe done more things like this. You know, throwing myself into things like travel and meeting new people, engaging with new people, and just generally talking to others. Because it's quite easy with bodybuilding. I see this a lot, to be quite closed in what you do, and you actually forget to enjoy the greater things in life that are communicating with people, that are traveling to other gyms. You know, I have some very close friends that are very, very dedicated to the sport, but I almost look at what they do and I'm like, man, like, you're missing out on some things here. You know, there's some greater things to bodybuilding, like the social side of things, like the communication, meeting people, that are so great and that can actually improve your every aspect of what you do. So I think I'd have done more of that, and I think what I need to improve on in the future is, I think, generally being a bit more accepting of that. Like, you know, if someone came to me in the future, and if I had my own place, in the UK I currently live at home, but if I had my own place and someone said, you know, I want to come over and train with you for a bit, and they were a close friend, I in the future I should definitely be like, yeah, come down, you can stay, I'll put you up, you know, we'll train together, kind of thing. Like doing more things like that, and being less closed in, because it's quite easy for me to be very closed in and just eat my normal foods, train in my normal gym, eat, sleep, train, repeat, work and all that jazz. It's quite easy for that to happen. So doing more social things I think is very important. But the whole sort of how I set up my preps when I competed, I think it all worked. It happened for a reason, and it was enough for me to get where I wanted to be today. So that I wouldn't change a thing, I don't think.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, because like I said, you're just learning a little bit and getting experience over the time. So, and all in all the little mistakes we do makes us the person who we are at this moment. And I mean, probably both of us will do the one or two or many mistakes in the future, but we will learn from it and gain the experience from it and get even to be better persons in the future.
Absolutely, yeah.
So for the people who want to follow you, where can they find you?
Sure, so if you want to follow me, I'm most active on Instagram, and that's AJMorris_. I have a plethora of other things, so I'll roll through them all. So I have a membership site, which is www.madebymorriscoaching.com/membership. That has well over 100 videos on it. It documented my entire prep. So I did sort of like daily updates throughout my entire prep. So if you want to see sort of what I was doing with nutrition, steps, cardio, training throughout my diet and peak weeks, check that out. That'll give you a lot of sort of information on that front. And it also has a lot of training footage. So I've filmed a lot of the sessions that I've done here. And it also has a weekly Q&A where I ask, I say, ask me anything in the private Facebook group. People log their questions. So it's a very interactive group, and it's just $4.99 a month, which is something like, €5, €6 kind of thing. So that's that. And then in terms of free content, I have a YouTube channel, which I put up, pretty frequent videos on there. Again, I documented a fair amount of my prep on there too, so that's there too if you want to not pay for it, be honest. And the podcast, which I do with Valentin, that's on YouTube and iTunes. So if you search the Natty Scene or Teen Muscle Radio, which is its old name, which needs to be gotten rid of, but search either one of them and you'll find it. And that is really where I'm most active. Obviously, I am on Facebook. If anyone wants to sort of add me on my personal account, that's fine. I tend to put up training footage, and if you wanted to ask me a direct question, I'd be fine with taking it on there. So I just if I don't immediately know someone or they don't have many mutual friends, I have my friend request list is just filled with a load of crap. So but I'll try and sort of accept anyone that does add. And that's pretty much it. Obviously, feel free to DM me on Instagram if anyone has any specific questions on what I've said today or anything. And also, we always with any podcast, we always appreciate people sharing it, and so whack it on your story if you're watching or have watched, and tag us both in it. That's always cool to see who's watching it. I like that a lot. So, and I'll reshare it on my story as well. So
thanks for your time.
No worries, man.
Thanks for your knowledge. And I think it's time to get some food now.
Yeah, cool. Wicked. Thanks, guys.